Hey guys, it's Patrice from the Redefining Wealth podcast. I don't know if you've ever really wanted to go back to sleep and the Lord just won't let you. Man, my word for this year is obedience. And when these moments happen, Lord knows I want to curl up and pull the covers up. But out of obedience, I'm up in my prayer closet because I feel compelled to share with someone. And I think that there's several things that led up to this, there's several things. One being yesterday was Resurrection Sunday. Some of you call it Easter. And I listened to Mike Todd of Transformation Church in Tulsa, Oklahoma, who's phenomenal. And he talked about the middle, right in the middle. And essentially, he likened the reality of Christ dying on Friday and resurrecting on Sunday morning to how we find ourselves in these situations, circumstances, challenges, trials, and there's a Saturday in there. There's a middle period, and people love to talk about the reality, or they'll mention the reality, but then we run to the resurrection, and we don't talk about what happens in the middle. And he went through this 5-part method, which was brilliant. I think what happens in the middle, if I remember correctly, was you're presented with a dilemma. The enemy hits you with deception. You have a decision to make, right? When you make your decision, there's going to be the death of something, one way or another. And then we get to deliverance. And that's how we get to the resurrection, right? And yesterday, as I was listening to this message, I was thinking of several different things I've been through in my life and oh my gosh, how this completely applies. But I guess because last night we watched the Clark Sisters. If you haven't seen that on Lifetime, please do yourself a favor. I think it was a great movie. They did a great job. But I watched the Clark Sisters movie last night, and I think all of these coming together just made me compelled to share one of my middles. Now, let me tell you, I'm going to challenge somebody else at the end of this to share their middle. Don't tag me in no dance challenges. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to be in the Don't Rush challenge. But if you want to join me in the middle challenge, because too many people with platforms, and I don't care if you have 5 followers or 5 million followers, we love to go from, I was broke, now I'm rich. I was sick, now I'm healed. We love to go from one extreme to the next, and we don't really tell people what happened in the middle. And there was something about seeing Kiki Sheard. So Kiara Clark Sheard used to just go by Kiki Sheard. I didn't know that she was even the daughter of a Clark sister back in the day. I had no idea. But I think seeing her in that movie last night is what, I didn't think about it last night, but this morning it's been on my spirit. So let me tell the story. Here's the middle. On the podcast, I have shared many times that my son died in 2006 after 5 hours in my arms. And so when people ask me about that, the reality was, yes, my son died. The resurrection was a year later, almost to the day my daughter was born, but I don't share the middle. I just jump from one child dying to the next one being born. And when my son passed, one of the first things that I remember about that whole scenario is that the hospital that I delivered him in is not the first hospital I went to. I was at a hospital in Inglewood, California called Daniel Freeman, which has since shut down for good reason, I'm sure. And I was in the lobby, the waiting room of the ER. And while I was 25 years old, I looked 15. And they were completely disrespectful. They left me there doubled over in pain. My friend Ashley, who came with me, had to keep asking and begging and saying, she's pregnant, she's pregnant. They would not see me. I remember other people saying, hey, can somebody help this little girl? Because they thought I was really young. I wasn't. She's pregnant. She needs help. I was doubled over in pain. I don't remember what anyone looked like. I just could hear their voices. And I remember a woman coming, and she had her hand on my back and she started praying. And she was praying and she was praying, and some of it I don't think I could make out. She was praying in tongues, but she was praying. And there was a man who was across from me who was bleeding. I knew it was bleeding because I saw blood dripping on the floor as I was doubled over. I could see that. And when they called him, he said, take her. She's pregnant. She needs help. And long story short, they took me. They didn't do the right things at all. We know there's so many disparities in the Black community when it comes to medical stuff, so I won't even get into that. They sent me home with Tylenol. My mom had to come back and get me hours later and take me to Cedars-Sinai, where I ended up having my son. But come to find out, where I could have also died. So that's a whole nother story, just from being septic. So I heard this song by Kiara Sheard called Praise Offering. Maybe, I don't know, a couple days after I'd been released from the hospital. And that song, I just listened to it over and over and over again. Every day. I had the CD and I would just play it over and over again in my car. I would take it out the car, take it in the house, play it over and over again. It was like my meditation, if you will. And I started going back to my church, Faithful Central Bible Church back then. And I was going to midweek services. And there was one midweek service where there was a woman I had never seen before. She sat maybe a couple rows behind me. And, you know, you turn and shake your neighbor's hand and say something nice and all that stuff. Okay. We get to the end of midweek, and the woman was asking people for a ride. And people were like, oh, no, I'm not going that way. I couldn't hear where she said she was going, but she was asking for a ride. And I saw like 2 or 3 people deny her. And I don't know what possessed me. Right now I know, but I didn't know what possessed me. And I was like, well, I could give you a ride. I lived literally 5 minutes away from that church. There was no reason for me to go anywhere else. I just offered. I said, I could give you a ride. And she's like, really? Yeah, she comes, she gets in my truck. We're driving. I'm like, Lord, what have I done? This lady lives far. And we're talking, but we're driving. She lives on the east side for anyone who's from, or she was staying on the east side for anyone who's from LA. And we went from Inglewood to like Watts. And wasn't familiar. So when I saw the Watts Tower, I was like, oh Lord, is that the Watts Tower? I never really gone to the east side. And so I was like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? We're talking, and I always have that song on. I never turned it on because I had a guest in the car and we were just talking. And then maybe a couple blocks before it's time for me to drop her off, she starts to say stuff like God wants me to tell you. And she just starts saying stuff. And I just start weeping in the car. She's like, remember he's faithful. His compassions will fail you not. His mercy is new every morning. And she just starts saying this stuff. But I'm like, those are the words from the song. How does she know? Those are the words from the song. And I hadn't said anything about losing my son. I hadn't said anything. She just started saying all this stuff. And then she said, and God is faithful. You're going to have another baby. I'm like, I don't know. I said, have I met you before? She said, no, but this is what God is telling me to tell you. So I said, well, about 8 weeks ago, I lost my son. I lost my baby. And I started telling her the story. I said, and I went to Daniel Freeman and I was doubled over in pain and they didn't help me. And she said, oh my God, are you the young lady that I prayed for? I said, excuse me? She said, I prayed for you. I was in that hospital with my son. He fell and he broke his arm. And you were there and you were bawling and doubled over in pain. And I prayed for you. She said, I never saw your face. I never really saw your face. All I knew is God told me to pray for you. And we just sat there. Not long though, she said, well, look at God. You know, she said some stuff, and it's like she jumped out the car. I didn't even see where she went. God's honest truth. I pulled up to this place. She got out. By the time I look back, I never saw where she went. I never saw this woman again on a Wednesday night. I never saw her again at church. And before she got out, she told me to read Lamentations. And so maybe a day or so later, I remember, and I'm like, oh, I need to read Lamentations. And I got to Lamentations 3:22 and 23. And it says, it is because of the Lord's mercy and loving kindness that we are not consumed, because his compassions fail us not. They are new every morning. Great and abundant is your stability and faithfulness. And it was the words from Kiki Sheard's song. So the words that I have been singing every day, all day, every day, all day, I had no idea they were from a scripture. I had no idea it was from Lamentations, but I believe that that woman was an angel. She was there with me at the hospital. She met me at church. I randomly gave her this ride. But that's when I decided to stop listening to the deception that the enemy was trying to plant in my head for all the things I did wrong, because I got pregnant out of wedlock, and you know, things I did as a teenager. I thought that I was being punished. And because of that song and this woman, and you know, staying in church even in spite of, feeling even ashamed when I would go to church, but staying regardless, I made it to the deliverance piece, right? Some things had to die, some beliefs had to die, but I made it to that deliverance piece. And I didn't expect this to be so long, but I don't know what middle you're experiencing right now. I know that there's a lot of hurt out there. I know there's a lot of pain, and I know that the enemy is trying to use it to shame you, to make you embarrassed, to make you feel guilty, to make you feel like you're by yourself, to make you feel like you're unworthy. But you don't have to fall for the deception. You can make a decision to stick with God regardless, and believe that he'll help you get past all of that and get to your deliverance. And so, if there's going to be a challenge, I think there should be an in the middle challenge. I think that people should share their middle. I think that we should share our stories, because we overcome by our testimony, and people are blessed by the testimony. They're not necessarily blessed in the jump from your reality to resurrection. Folks are in a Saturday. Somebody's in a Saturday right now, and they can't see from Friday evening to Sunday morning. And I think more of us need to share our Saturdays. So I have plenty of Saturdays. That was the one that was on my spirit, and I hope it blesses somebody. All right, I gotta go get myself together. Bye.